Sarah Martinez never imagined that a simple morning jog would change her life forever. The sun was just beginning to rise over the quiet suburban streets of Denver when she laced up her running shoes and stepped outside her modest two-bedroom apartment. At 28, Sarah worked as a battlefield medic for the Colorado National Guard. But today was supposed to be her day off. She had planned nothing more exciting than a peaceful run through the neighborhood park, followed by coffee and catching up on her favorite book. The morning air was crisp and fresh, carrying the scent of blooming lilacs from nearby gardens. Sarah had always found solace in these early morning runs. They cleared her mind and prepared her for whatever challenges lay ahead. As a medic, she had seen her share of difficult situations during training exercises and humanitarian missions, but nothing had quite prepared her for what was about to unfold. As she rounded the corner near Riverside Park, Sarah heard the screech of tires followed by a thunderous crash that seemed to shake the very ground beneath her feet. Without hesitation, her training kicked in, and she sprinted toward the source of the sound. What she discovered would test every skill she had learned and push her physical and mental limits beyond anything she had ever experienced. Two vehicles had collided head-on at the intersection just ahead. One was a small sedan that had been completely crushed on the driver's side, while the other was a large delivery truck that had jackknifed across both lanes of traffic. Steam rose from the engines of both vehicles and the smell of gasoline and burning rubber filled the air. Sarah could see that the situation was critical and that lives hung in the balance. Without thinking about her own safety, Sarah rushed to the sedan first. The driver, a middle-aged man, was unconscious and trapped behind the wheel. Blood trickled from a gash on his forehead and his breathing was shallow and labored. Sarah quickly assessed his condition, checking for signs of spinal injury while trying to determine the best way to extract him safely from the wreckage. As she worked to stabilize the man's neck and clear his airway, Sarah heard groaning coming from the delivery truck. She realized with growing dread that there were multiple victims, and she was the only person with medical training at the scene. Other bystanders had gathered, but they stood frozen, unsure of how to help. Sarah knew she would have to coordinate rescue efforts while providing critical medical care to save as many lives as possible. The truck driver was conscious, but in severe pain. When Sarah climbed up to assess his condition, she could see that his left leg was pinned beneath the twisted metal of the dashboard. His face was pale and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool morning air. Sarah recognized the signs of shock and knew she had to act quickly to prevent his condition from deteriorating further. "Stay with me," Sarah told the truck driver, whose name tag read Miguel. "Help is coming, but I need you to stay awake and talk to me. Can you tell me where it hurts the most?" Miguel's voice was weak but clear. "My leg. I can't feel my leg. And my chest. It's hard to breathe." Sarah carefully examined Miguel while maintaining constant communication with him. She suspected internal injuries and possibly a punctured lung, but without proper equipment she could only provide basic stabilization. Using her belt and a piece of torn fabric from her running shirt, she created a makeshift tourniquet to control bleeding from a deep laceration on Miguel's arm. Meanwhile, she could hear the sedan driver regaining consciousness. His moans grew louder, and Sarah knew she needed to check on him again. The challenge of treating multiple critical patients simultaneously, while waiting for professional emergency responders to arrive, was unlike anything she had faced in her military training. Sarah's mind raced as she mentally triaged the patients and prioritized their needs. The sedan driver appeared to have a concussion and possible internal bleeding, while Miguel had obvious trauma to his leg and chest injuries that could prove fatal if not treated properly. Both men needed immediate hospital care, but Sarah had to keep them stable until paramedics could arrive. As she moved between the two vehicles, providing reassurance and basic medical care, Sarah began to notice other people emerging from nearby houses and businesses. Some called emergency services on their phones, while others offered to help in any way they could. Sarah quickly organized volunteers to direct traffic away from the accident scene and to gather supplies that might be useful for treating the injured. One elderly woman brought clean towels and bottled water from her nearby coffee shop. A teenage boy offered his jacket to help keep Miguel warm, while his mother called Sarah's instructions to the 911 dispatcher to ensure emergency crews would arrive with the right equipment and medications. Despite the chaos surrounding her, Sarah felt a strange sense of calm and purpose. Her training had prepared her for high-pressure situations, but this was different. This wasn't a controlled military exercise or a planned humanitarian mission. This was real life, with real consequences, and she was the only thing standing between these two men and potentially tragic outcomes. As sirens began to wail in the distance, Sarah continued her assessment of both patients. The sedan driver, whose wallet identified him as Robert Chen, was becoming more responsive but complained of severe abdominal pain. Sarah suspected internal bleeding and knew he would need surgery as soon as possible. Miguel's condition was stabilizing somewhat, but Sarah worried about the amount of time his leg had been trapped. She had managed to control the bleeding from his arm, but without X-rays and proper diagnostic equipment, she couldn't determine the full extent of his injuries. The sound of approaching ambulances filled Sarah with relief, but she knew her work was far from over. She would need to provide detailed information about each patient's condition and the treatment she had already administered. The next few minutes would be crucial in determining whether both men would survive this devastating accident. As the first paramedic unit rounded the corner, Sarah took a deep breath and prepared to transfer care of her patients to the emergency medical team. Little did she know that this morning's events were only the beginning of an extraordinary journey that would test her courage, skill, and determination in ways she had never imagined possible. The paramedics arrived like a well-orchestrated symphony of emergency response. Sarah watched as 3 ambulances, 2 fire trucks, and several police vehicles surrounded the accident scene within minutes of each other. The lead paramedic, a seasoned veteran named Jake Morrison, approached Sarah with practiced efficiency. "What do we have here?" Jake asked, his voice calm but urgent. Sarah quickly briefed him on both patients' conditions, explaining the treatments she had administered and her observations about their injuries. Jake nodded approvingly as she described her assessment process and the makeshift medical interventions she had implemented. "Good work," Jake said. "Your quick thinking probably saved both their lives." As the emergency crews took over patient care, Sarah stepped back to allow them room to work. However, her relief was short-lived. Jake suddenly grabbed her arm and pointed toward her elbow. "You're injured," he said, concern evident in his voice. Sarah looked down in surprise to see that her left arm was bent at an unnatural angle. During the adrenaline rush of treating the accident victims, she hadn't noticed that she had apparently broken her arm while climbing into the delivery truck to reach Miguel. The pain hit her like a wave as soon as she became aware of the injury. "I didn't even realize," Sarah admitted, feeling suddenly dizzy as the shock began to wear off. Jake immediately called for another paramedic to examine Sarah's arm. The injury was clearly serious, with visible swelling and bruising already beginning to appear around her elbow. Despite her medical training, Sarah found it difficult to remain objective about her own condition. "We need to get you to the hospital too," Jake insisted. "That's definitely broken and you might have nerve damage." Sarah protested weakly, wanting to stay and ensure that Robert and Miguel were properly cared for, but Jake was firm. "You've done more than enough. Let us take it from here." As Sarah was being loaded into an ambulance, she caught sight of Robert Chen being carefully extracted from his sedan. The rescue team had used hydraulic tools to cut away portions of the vehicle, and he was being placed on a backboard with a cervical collar to protect his spine. His wife had arrived and was crying as she spoke with one of the police officers. Miguel was also being prepared for transport. Sarah felt a surge of satisfaction when she saw that he was conscious and talking with the paramedics. Her quick intervention had clearly made a difference in stabilizing his condition until professional help could arrive. During the ambulance ride to Denver General Hospital, Sarah's paramedic, a young woman named Lisa, carefully immobilized her broken arm and started an IV line for pain management. Sarah tried to refuse the medication at first, wanting to remain alert, but Lisa convinced her that managing the pain would actually help her heal more effectively. "You're going to need surgery," Lisa explained as she examined the X-rays that had been transmitted from the portable unit. "The break is pretty severe and there might be damage to the surrounding ligaments and nerves." At the hospital, Sarah found herself in the unusual position of being a patient rather than a care provider. The emergency department staff treated her with the same professional efficiency she had witnessed countless times from the other side of the medical relationship. Dr. Amanda Foster, the orthopedic surgeon on call, explained that Sarah would need immediate surgery to repair the complex fracture. "The good news is that you're young and healthy," Dr. Foster said. "With proper treatment and physical therapy, you should make a full recovery." The bad news is that you're looking at several months of rehabilitation. As Sarah was being prepared for surgery, she couldn't stop thinking about Robert and Miguel. She asked every nurse and doctor she encountered about their conditions, but patient privacy laws prevented them from sharing detailed information. All she could learn was that both men had been admitted and were receiving appropriate care. The surgery took nearly 4 hours. Dr. Foster had to insert metal plates and screws to hold the bone fragments in place while they healed. When Sarah woke up in the recovery room, her arm was encased in a heavy cast that extended from her shoulder to her fingertips. The pain medication made her feel groggy and disoriented. But Sarah's first coherent thought was still about the accident victims. A nurse named Patricia, who had heard about Sarah's heroic actions from the paramedics, was able to provide some information. "The man from the sedan is stable," Patricia said quietly. "He had surgery for internal bleeding, but the doctors expect him to make a full recovery. The truck driver is in the ICU, but his condition is improving." Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. Despite her own injury, she had accomplished what she set out to do that morning, even if it wasn't what she had originally planned. Over the next few days, as Sarah remained in the hospital for observation and pain management, she received numerous visitors. Her commanding officer from the National Guard came to check on her condition and to commend her for her actions. Local news reporters wanted to interview her about the accident, though Sarah declined most of their requests. The most meaningful visit came from Miguel's family. His wife Maria and their 2 young children came to thank Sarah personally for saving their father's life. Miguel was still in the hospital but was expected to make a full recovery, though he would need extensive physical therapy for his leg injury. "The doctors told us that if you hadn't been there, he might not have survived," Maria said through tears. "We can never repay you for what you did." Sarah was deeply moved by their gratitude, but she felt uncomfortable being called a hero. In her mind, she had simply done what anyone with medical training would have done in the same situation. Robert Chen's family also visited, bringing flowers and a heartfelt thank you card. Robert was recovering well from his surgery and was expected to be discharged within a few days. His daughter, a college student studying pre-medicine, was particularly interested in hearing about Sarah's medical training and career path. As Sarah's hospital stay continued, she began to reflect on the events of that fateful morning. The accident had changed the trajectory of her life in ways she was only beginning to understand. Her broken arm would require months of rehabilitation, potentially affecting her military career and her ability to serve as a battlefield medic. But more than the physical challenges ahead, Sarah realized that the experience had given her a new perspective on her chosen profession. She had always known intellectually that her medical skills could save lives, but experiencing it firsthand in such dramatic circumstances had deepened her commitment to helping others. Dr. Foster visited regularly to check on Sarah's progress and adjust her treatment plan. The surgeon was impressed with how well Sarah was handling both the physical pain and the emotional impact of the accident. "You've shown remarkable strength throughout this ordeal," Dr. Foster told her. "Your quick thinking and medical expertise undoubtedly saved 2 lives, and your positive attitude during your own recovery is truly inspiring." As Sarah prepared for discharge from the hospital, she knew that the most challenging part of her journey was still ahead. Learning to function with one arm while her injury healed would test her independence and resilience in ways she had never imagined. Returning home with one functioning arm proved to be far more challenging than Sarah had anticipated. Simple tasks that she had performed automatically for years now required careful planning and creative problem-solving. Buttoning shirts, preparing meals, and even basic hygiene became complex puzzles that tested her patience and determination. Sarah's apartment, which had always felt cozy and manageable, now seemed filled with obstacles. The kitchen cabinets were too high to reach safely with one arm, and opening jars or cans required assistance. Her sister Emma moved in temporarily to help during the initial recovery period, but Sarah struggled with the loss of independence. "I feel so helpless," Sarah confided to Emma one evening as she fumbled with the zipper on her jacket. "I'm supposed to be the one helping others, not the one who needs help with everything." Emma, a physical therapist by profession, understood the psychological challenges that often accompanied serious injuries. "This is temporary," she reminded Sarah gently. "Your body is healing and you'll regain your strength and mobility." But right now, accepting help isn't weakness. It's part of the healing process. The first few weeks at home were marked by frustration and setbacks. Sarah had always been an active person, and the forced inactivity was difficult to accept. She couldn't drive, couldn't exercise in her usual ways, and felt disconnected from her normal routine. The pain medication made her feel foggy and tired, which only added to her sense of being trapped in her own body. Physical therapy sessions began 3 weeks after surgery. Sarah's therapist, Mark Rodriguez, was a former military medic himself and understood the unique challenges faced by healthcare professionals who suddenly found themselves as patients. The hardest part for people like us, Mark explained during their first session, is that we're used to being in control and helping others. Being on the receiving end of care can feel uncomfortable and vulnerable. The initial therapy sessions were painful and exhausting. Sarah's arm had lost significant strength and range of motion during the weeks of immobilization. Simple exercises like lifting her arm or making a fist required tremendous effort and often caused shooting pains through her elbow and shoulder. Mark guided Sarah through a carefully designed rehabilitation program that gradually increased in intensity and complexity. They started with basic range of motion exercises, using her uninjured arm to gently move the healing limb through its natural movement patterns. Progress will be slow at first, Mark warned. Your body needs time to rebuild the strength and coordination you lost. But I've seen remarkable recoveries from injuries like yours. The key is consistency and patience. As the weeks progressed, Sarah began to notice small improvements. She could lift her arm slightly higher each day, and the sharp pains gradually gave way to a more manageable ache. The cast was replaced with a removable brace that allowed for more targeted exercises and better hygiene. During this recovery period, Sarah received regular updates about Robert and Miguel through the hospital's patient liaison program. Both men were making steady progress in their own rehabilitation journeys. Robert had returned to work part-time and was dealing with some ongoing back pain from the accident. Miguel was relearning to walk properly after multiple surgeries on his leg. One afternoon, Miguel called Sarah directly to invite her to his daughter's quinceañera celebration. His family wanted to honor her as a special guest, recognizing her role in saving his life and preserving their family. "I would be honored if you would come," Miguel said over the phone. "My whole family wants to meet the angel who saved me." Sarah was touched by the invitation but worried about attending a large social gathering while still recovering. Her arm was still weak and she tired easily. However, Emma encouraged her to accept, arguing that connecting with the people she had helped might provide emotional healing to complement her physical recovery. The quinceañera was a beautiful celebration held in a community center decorated with pink and gold streamers. Miguel walked with a slight limp, but moved confidently around the room, greeting guests and clearly enjoying his daughter's special day. When he introduced Sarah to the gathering, the entire room erupted in applause. "This woman saved my life," Miguel announced, his voice carrying across the crowded room. "Because of her courage and skill, I am here to see my daughter become a young woman." Sarah felt overwhelmed by the warmth and gratitude of Miguel's extended family and friends. Dozens of people approached her throughout the evening to thank her and share their own stories of overcoming challenges and helping others. The celebration gave Sarah a new perspective on her recovery process. Seeing Miguel enjoying his daughter's milestone despite his own ongoing physical challenges reminded her that healing wasn't just about returning to her previous level of function. It was about adapting and finding new ways to live fully. Back in physical therapy, Sarah attacked her exercises with renewed determination. She worked with Mark to develop strategies for performing her job duties as a medic with potential long-term limitations in her arm strength and mobility. Many medical professionals continue successful careers after injuries like yours, Mark assured her. "We'll focus on building compensatory strength in other areas and developing techniques that work with your body's new reality." Sarah began practicing medical procedures, using her right arm as the dominant hand, even though she had been left-handed her entire life. The learning curve was steep, but her military training had taught her to adapt to challenging circumstances. As her physical condition improved, Sarah also began attending counseling sessions to address the emotional and psychological impact of the accident and her injury. Dr. Rachel Kim, a counselor who specialized in working with first responders and military personnel, helped Sarah process the complex feelings surrounding her experience. It's common for people who have been through traumatic events to experience conflicting emotions, Dr. Kim explained. You might feel proud of your actions but also angry about your injury. Both responses are completely normal and valid. Through counseling, Sarah began to understand that her identity as a helper and healer didn't depend solely on her physical capabilities. Her experience as a patient had given her new insights into the healing process and a deeper empathy for the people she served. 6 months after the accident, Sarah received clearance from Dr. Foster to return to limited duty with the National Guard. Her arm had regained most of its strength and mobility, though she would always have some restrictions on heavy lifting and repetitive motions. The night before returning to work, Sarah sat in her apartment reviewing the medical protocols and procedures she would need to perform. Her broken arm had healed, but she was aware that she was not quite the same person who had left for a morning jog nearly 7 months earlier. She thought about Robert and Miguel, both of whom had returned to their normal lives with their own adaptations and adjustments. The accident had changed all 3 of them permanently, but it had also demonstrated the resilience of the human spirit and the power of quick thinking and compassionate action. As Sarah prepared for bed, she felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement about returning to active duty. She knew that her experience as a patient would make her a better medic, and she was eager to put her hard-won insights to use in helping others navigate their own healing journeys. Sarah's return to active duty with the Colorado National Guard was met with a mixture of excitement and apprehension from her fellow medics. Word of her heroic actions during the car accident had spread throughout the unit, and many of her colleagues viewed her as something of a legend. However, Sarah felt the weight of their expectations and worried about whether she could perform at her previous level with her recovering arm. Colonel Martinez, the unit commander, called Sarah into his office on her first day back. The colonel was a stern but fair leader who had served multiple tours overseas and understood the challenges faced by returning personnel. Martinez, the colonel said, using Sarah's last name in military fashion, "It's good to have you back. How are you feeling about returning to full medical duties?" Sarah stood at attention, though her left arm still felt stiff in the formal position. "I'm ready to serve, sir. My doctors have cleared me for all essential duties, though I may need some accommodations for heavy lifting." Colonel Martinez nodded thoughtfully. "Your actions during that civilian emergency reflect the best of what we expect from our medics. However, I want you to take things slowly as you readjust. You'll be paired with Sergeant Williams for the first few weeks to ensure you're comfortable with all procedures." Sergeant David Williams was the experienced medic who had served as Sarah's mentor when she first joined the unit 3 years earlier. He was known for his patience and thoroughness, making him an ideal partner for Sarah's transition back to active duty. "Welcome back, Martinez," Williams said with a warm smile when they met in the medical bay. "I heard you've been keeping busy during your recovery." Sarah appreciated Williams' lighthearted approach. Many of her colleagues seemed unsure of how to interact with her after her injury, treating her either like a fragile patient or an untouchable hero. Williams' normal, professional demeanor helped her feel like she was truly returning to her old life. Their first assignment together was a routine training exercise designed to test the unit's emergency response capabilities. A simulated chemical spill scenario required the medical team to set up a decontamination station and treat multiple casualties with various injuries. As Sarah worked to establish the medical triage area, she noticed that some tasks that had once been automatic now required conscious thought and adaptation. Setting up IV lines with her right hand felt awkward at first, and she had to modify her technique for immobilizing patients' limbs. Williams observed quietly, offering suggestions when needed, but allowing Sarah to work through the challenges independently. "Your hands remember more than you think," he commented after watching her successfully intubate a training mannequin. "The skills are still there. You just need time to rebuild the muscle memory." The exercise was declared a success, but Sarah felt exhausted afterward in a way that surprised her. The physical demands of the work, combined with the mental effort of adapting her techniques, had taken more energy than she had expected. That evening, Sarah called Dr. Kim, her counselor, to discuss her concerns about returning to work. "I thought I was ready," Sarah admitted, "but everything feels harder than it used to. I'm worried that I'm not the medic I was before the accident." Dr. Kim listened carefully before responding. Recovery isn't just about returning to your previous level of function. It's about integrating your new experiences and capabilities into who you are becoming. You've gained knowledge and perspective that make you a different kind of medic, potentially a better one. Over the following weeks, Sarah gradually regained her confidence and rhythm in her medical duties. She developed new techniques for performing procedures that accommodated the slight limitations in her arm's range of motion. More importantly, she found that her experience as a patient had given her a deeper understanding of the healing process from the recipient's perspective. During a field training exercise in the mountains, Sarah encountered her first real medical emergency since returning to duty. A young soldier named Private Johnson had fallen during a climbing exercise and sustained what appeared to be a serious ankle injury, along with cuts and bruises from the rocky terrain. As Sarah approached the injured soldier, she felt a familiar surge of adrenaline and focus. However, this time she also felt a deeper sense of empathy and connection with the patient's experience. She remembered her own feelings of vulnerability and fear when she had been injured and used that understanding to guide her approach. Private Johnson, "I'm Sergeant Martinez, and I'm going to take care of you," Sarah said calmly as she began her assessment. "I know you're in pain and probably scared, but we're going to get you stabilized and transported to proper medical care." Sarah's gentle but confident demeanor seemed to immediately calm the injured soldier. As she examined his ankle and treated his wounds, she explained each step of her assessment and treatment plan, helping Johnson feel more in control of his situation. "I broke my arm in an accident last year," Sarah shared as she splinted Johnson's ankle. "I know how scary it can be to suddenly find yourself injured and dependent on others. But I also know that with proper care and time, your body has an amazing ability to heal." Williams, who was assisting with the treatment, noticed the difference in Sarah's approach. She had always been a skilled medic, but there was now a warmth and understanding in her patient interactions that hadn't been there before her injury. The evacuation of Private Johnson went smoothly, and he was successfully treated at the base hospital. His ankle required surgery, but doctors expected a full recovery with appropriate rehabilitation. News of Sarah's successful handling of the emergency quickly spread through the unit. Her colleagues began to see that her injury hadn't diminished her capabilities. If anything, it had enhanced her effectiveness as a medic by adding a layer of personal understanding to her professional skills. Colonel Martinez called Sarah back to his office after receiving the report about Private Johnson's treatment. "Outstanding work, Martinez," he said. "Your approach to patient care has clearly evolved, and the results speak for themselves." Sarah felt a surge of pride and relief. She had proven to herself and her unit that she could still perform her duties effectively, even with the physical and emotional changes resulting from her injury. As the months passed, Sarah became known throughout the National Guard for her exceptional patient care and her ability to connect with injured soldiers on a personal level. She began teaching classes on trauma response and patient communication, sharing insights gained from both her professional training and her personal experience as a patient. One evening, while reviewing medical protocols in preparation for an upcoming deployment exercise, Sarah received a phone call from Robert Chen. She hadn't spoken with him since leaving the hospital, though she had received occasional updates about his recovery through the hospital's patient liaison program. "Sergeant Martinez," Robert said, "I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the hospital. They said it would be okay to contact you." Sarah was pleased to hear from Robert and asked about his recovery. He reported that he had returned to work full-time and was dealing with only minor ongoing back pain from the accident. "The reason I'm calling," Robert continued, "is that my daughter is graduating from college next month with a degree in emergency medicine. She's wanted to meet you ever since the accident. You've been her inspiration for choosing that field." Sarah was deeply moved by the news. The idea that her actions had influenced someone to pursue a career in emergency medicine felt like an unexpected but meaningful legacy of that difficult morning. "I would be honored to meet her," Sarah replied, "and congratulations on her graduation. You must be very proud." As Sarah hung up the phone, she reflected on the complex web of connections and consequences that had emerged from a single moment of crisis. Her broken arm had healed, but the impact of that morning continued to ripple outward, affecting lives in ways she was only beginning to understand. The deployment notification arrived on a Tuesday morning, exactly 18 months after Sarah's accident. The Colorado National Guard unit was being called to assist with humanitarian relief efforts following a devastating earthquake in a remote region of Central America. Sarah stared at the official documents spread across her kitchen table, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness about her first overseas deployment since her injury. Colonel Martinez had personally recommended Sarah for the mission, citing her exceptional patient care skills and her ability to remain calm under pressure. The deployment would last 6 months and would involve establishing field hospitals in areas where local medical infrastructure had been destroyed by the earthquake. Emma found Sarah sitting at the kitchen table that evening, still staring at the deployment papers. "You're going, aren't you?" Emma asked, reading the expression on her sister's face. Sarah nodded slowly. "I think I have to. This is what I trained for, and I feel ready. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous about how my arm will hold up under those conditions." The next few weeks were filled with intensive preparation. Sarah underwent additional medical evaluations to ensure she was fit for deployment, participated in specialized training for disaster relief operations, and worked with her physical therapist to develop exercises she could perform in the field to maintain her arm strength and mobility. Mark Rodriguez, her physical therapist, was confident in Sarah's readiness for deployment. "Your arm has healed remarkably well," he told her during their final session. "You've built up compensatory strength in other areas, and you've developed excellent adaptation strategies. Just remember to listen to your body and don't push through serious pain." As the departure date approached, Sarah received unexpected visitors. Miguel and his family came to her apartment to wish her well on her deployment. Miguel's daughter, now 16, had learned English specifically so she could communicate with Sarah. "Thank you for saving my father," the teenager said, and carefully practiced English. "Because of you, he was able to walk me to my quinceañera and will be there for my wedding someday." The family presented Sarah with a small religious medallion that had belonged to Miguel's grandmother. "For protection," Maria explained through tears. "Our whole family will pray for your safety every day you are gone." Sarah was deeply touched by their gesture and promised to wear the medallion throughout her deployment. The connection she had formed with Miguel's family had become one of the most meaningful relationships in her life, a constant reminder of why her work as a medic was so important. Robert Chen also reached out before her departure, inviting Sarah to meet his daughter Jennifer, who was now working as an emergency medical technician while applying to medical school. The three of them met for lunch at a restaurant near the hospital where Jennifer worked. Jennifer was an enthusiastic young woman who peppered Sarah with questions about military medicine and emergency response. "You probably don't realize," Jennifer said, "but hearing about what you did that morning completely changed my life direction. I had been planning to study business, but after seeing how you helped my father, I knew I wanted to help save lives too." Sarah felt humbled by Jennifer's words and spent the lunch sharing advice about medical training and the challenges and rewards of working in emergency medicine. As they parted, Jennifer hugged Sarah tightly. "Come back safely," Jennifer said. "The world needs more people like you." The flight to Central America took 12 hours, with a stopover in Miami. Sarah spent much of the journey reviewing medical protocols and studying information about the conditions they would encounter in the earthquake zone. The devastation was extensive, with entire towns destroyed and thousands of people injured or displaced. Upon arrival at the temporary military base, Sarah was assigned to a forward medical team led by Captain Lisa Park, an experienced battlefield surgeon who had served multiple combat tours. Captain Park briefed the medical personnel on the challenges they would face. "The local hospitals are either destroyed or completely overwhelmed," Captain Park explained. "We'll be operating in primitive conditions, often without electricity or running water. Every decision we make could mean the difference between life and death for these earthquake victims." Sarah's first assignment was to help establish a triage station in the ruins of what had once been a school building. The work was physically demanding, requiring her to lift and carry medical equipment over uneven terrain covered with debris from the earthquake. Despite her concerns about her arm's limitations, Sarah found that she was able to perform all necessary tasks. The months of rehabilitation and adaptation had prepared her well for the challenges of field medicine. More importantly, her experience as a patient had given her a unique ability to connect with the earthquake victims who were traumatized and in pain. The First patient Sarah treated was an elderly woman named Elena, who had been trapped under debris for 3 days before being rescued. Elena was severely dehydrated and had multiple fractures, but she was conscious and alert. However, she was terrified and seemed to be in psychological shock from her ordeal. Sarah sat beside Elena's stretcher and took her hand gently. Mi nombre es Sarah, she said in her limited Spanish. Estoy aquí para ayudarte. Using a combination of basic Spanish and hand gestures, Sarah was able to communicate reassurance and explain the medical procedures as she worked. Elena's eyes filled with tears of relief as Sarah cleaned and bandaged her wounds. The elderly woman whispered prayers of gratitude and squeezed Sarah's hand with surprising strength. In that moment, Sarah realized that her experience of being helpless and dependent on others for care had prepared her to understand exactly what Elena was feeling. Over the following weeks, Sarah treated hundreds of earthquake victims, children with broken bones, adults with crush injuries, elderly people suffering from dehydration and exposure. Each patient presented unique challenges, but Sarah approached every case with the same combination of medical expertise and empathetic understanding. The conditions in the field were exactly as difficult as Captain Park had warned. The medical team worked 18-hour days in intense heat and humidity, often by flashlight when the portable generators failed. Water was scarce and medical supplies had to be carefully rationed. Sarah's arm ached constantly from the physical demands of the work, but she found that the discomfort was manageable if she took regular breaks and performed the exercises Mark had taught her. More challenging was the emotional toll of seeing so much suffering and being unable to save every patient who came to the medical station. One particularly difficult day, Sarah lost a young boy who had been brought to the station with severe internal injuries. Despite hours of effort, the medical team was unable to stabilize him for transport to a better-equipped facility. Sarah sat outside the makeshift hospital that evening, feeling overwhelmed by grief and frustration. Captain Park found her there and sat down beside her. Losing patients never gets easier, the captain said quietly. But you have to remember that for everyone we can't save, there are many more who go home to their families because of what we do here. Sarah nodded, thinking about Elena and the dozens of other patients she had successfully treated. She touched the medallion from Miguel's family and felt renewed strength and purpose. As the weeks passed, Sarah began to notice that her reputation for exceptional patient care was spreading throughout the earthquake zone. Local volunteers and other medical personnel sought her out for advice on treating traumatized patients and communicating across language barriers. You have a gift, Dr. Maria Santos, a local physician working with the relief effort, told Sarah one afternoon. The patients trust you in a way that's unusual. They seem to understand that you truly know what they're going through. Sarah appreciated Dr. Santos's words, but she knew that her effectiveness came not from any special gift, but from the hard-won understanding she had gained through her own experience of injury, recovery, and healing. Her broken arm had taught her lessons that no medical school could provide. The final months of Sarah's deployment brought unexpected opportunities for leadership and training. As word of her exceptional patient care spread throughout the relief operation, she was asked to develop training protocols for communicating with traumatized patients and working effectively across language and cultural barriers. Captain Park assigned Sarah to lead a workshop for incoming medical volunteers, sharing techniques she had developed for building trust and providing comfort to patients who had experienced severe trauma. The workshop took place in a converted shipping container that served as the base's conference room. The most important thing to remember, Sarah told the group of newly arrived doctors and nurses, is that medical trauma extends far beyond physical injuries. These earthquake victims have lost their homes, their sense of security, and often their family members. Our job is to heal not just their bodies, but to help restore their faith in the possibility of recovery. Dr. James Mitchell, a surgeon from Atlanta, raised his hand. How do you build that kind of trust when you can't even speak the same language? Sarah smiled, remembering her early struggles with Spanish during the deployment. Touch is universal, she replied. A gentle hand on the shoulder, maintaining eye contact, speaking in a calm tone even if they don't understand your words. Patients can sense when you genuinely care about their well-being, regardless of language barriers. The workshops were so successful that Sarah was asked to create a written manual that could be distributed to other relief operations. Working by lamplight in her small quarters, she documented the techniques and insights she had developed, drawing on both her medical training and her personal experience as a patient. As the 6-month deployment neared its end, Sarah received news that would change the trajectory of her career. Colonel Martinez called her into the base commander's office for a secure video conference. "Martinez," the colonel began, "I've been discussing your performance with Captain Park and reviewing the reports from your training workshops. The Pentagon is looking for experienced medics to help develop new protocols for humanitarian relief operations. Would you be interested in a transfer to the Medical Research and Development Command?" Sarah was stunned by the offer. A position with the Research Command would mean leaving field medicine for a more administrative role, but it would also give her the opportunity to influence how military medical personnel were trained and deployed worldwide. "I need some time to think about it, sir," Sarah replied. "This deployment has been incredibly meaningful to me, but I'm not sure I'm ready to leave direct patient care." Colonel Martinez nodded understandingly. "Take your time. The position won't be available for several months anyway, but I want you to know that your unique perspective and experience make you an ideal candidate for this kind of work." Over the final weeks of deployment, Sarah continued treating patients while contemplating her future. The work remained challenging and rewarding, but she had begun to see opportunities to make a broader impact on military medicine beyond treating individual patients. One afternoon, while treating a family injured in a late aftershock, Sarah met Dr. Carmen Rodriguez, a researcher from the World Health Organization, who was studying the psychological impacts of natural disasters on affected populations. "I've been observing your patient interactions," Dr. Rodriguez told Sarah during a break between patients. "Your approach to trauma-informed care is remarkable. Have you considered pursuing advanced training in this area?" The conversation with Dr. Rodriguez sparked new ideas about Sarah's career path. She began to envision combining her field experience with formal education in psychology or public health, potentially developing new approaches to medical care in disaster zones. As the deployment officially ended, Sarah found herself reluctant to leave the patients and colleagues who had become like family over the past 6 months. The local medical staff organized a farewell celebration, presenting her with a hand-carved wooden cross made by a patient she had treated in the early weeks of the deployment. Elena, the elderly woman who had been Sarah's first patient in the earthquake zone, insisted on attending the farewell ceremony, despite her continued mobility limitations. With the help of a translator, Elena spoke to Sarah directly. "You gave me hope when I had lost everything," Elena said through tears. "Your hands healed my body, but your heart healed my spirit. I will pray for you every day for the rest of my life." The flight home to Colorado gave Sarah time to reflect on the transformative experiences of the past 6 months. Her broken arm had completely healed, with only a small scar and occasional stiffness as reminders of the accident that had changed her life. But more importantly, she had discovered that her greatest strength as a medic came not from her technical skills, but from her ability to connect with patients who were facing their darkest moments. Upon returning to Denver, Sarah was greeted by Emma, Miguel's family, and Robert Chen with his daughter Jennifer. The reunion was emotional, with everyone eager to hear about her experiences and celebrate her safe return. "You look different," Emma observed as they drove home from the airport. "Stronger somehow, but also more peaceful." Sarah smiled, understanding what her sister meant. The deployment had confirmed that her calling was not just to treat medical emergencies, but to help people navigate the complex process of healing and recovery. Over the following weeks, Sarah made her decision about the research position. She accepted the transfer to the Medical Research and Development Command, but negotiated an arrangement that would allow her to continue providing direct patient care on a part-time basis. Her first project involved developing new training protocols for military medics working in humanitarian relief operations. Drawing on her experiences in Central America and her personal journey of recovery, Sarah created comprehensive guidelines that addressed both the technical and emotional aspects of trauma care. 6 months later, Sarah received an invitation that brought her story full circle. The National Association of Emergency Medical Technicians was hosting their annual conference in Denver and had asked her to deliver the keynote address about her experiences and insights, standing at the podium in front of hundreds of emergency medical professionals. Sarah looked out at the audience and thought about the morning jog that had started this incredible journey. Her prepared remarks focused on the importance of empathy and personal connection in medical care, but she began with the story of the car accident that had broken her arm and opened her heart. 2 years ago, Sarah began, I thought I understood what it meant to be a healer. I had excellent technical skills, years of training, and a genuine desire to help others. But it wasn't until I found myself as a patient, broken, scared, and dependent on others for care, that I truly learned what healing means. As she spoke, Sarah noticed Jennifer Chen sitting in the front row, now a first-year medical student. Miguel and his family had driven from their hometown to attend the conference, and Elena, who had traveled from Central America specifically for the event, sat with tears streaming down her face. Sarah concluded her address with a challenge to the assembled medical professionals. Your technical skills will save lives, but your humanity will heal hearts. Never underestimate the power of a gentle touch, a kind word, or simply being present with someone in their moment of greatest need. The standing ovation lasted for several minutes, but what moved Sarah most was seeing the faces of the people whose lives had intersected with hers through that moment of crisis on a suburban Denver street. One broken arm had led to a journey of discovery that touched dozens of lives and changed her understanding of what it truly meant to serve others. As Sarah left the podium, she touched the scar on her arm and smiled. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as our most difficult challenges, and sometimes a single moment of crisis can illuminate a lifetime of purpose. Her broken arm had healed, but the lessons it taught her would continue to impact patients and medical professionals for years to come.